Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about what every good map should have on them and also talking about different types of maps. So let's get right into it. So I want you to answer this question right now. What do you believe that every good map should have on it? So if you're looking at any map of any purpose, of any kind, what should it have on it so that the reader can help better understand what the map is about? Okay, so I like to break down the list into a top five. So there are kind of five major things that all good maps should have on them. Number one, all maps should have a title. We need to know what the map is about, right? So if we don't know what the title is, then we might not be able to understand what the map's about. The second thing, it should have a compass rose. All good maps should have a way of telling direction and knowing which direction is which. The third thing they should have is a legend. All right, a legend is a fancy word for a key. You might have heard of map key. Excuse me. Excuse me. You might have heard of a legend before sixth grade, but if you have started to use the word map key kind of more often, I want you to switch to legend because it's a little bit more of a proper word to call what you call a box of telling you what colors mean, what symbols mean, what boxes mean, and different symbols mean as well. So the fourth thing that maps should have on them are a map scale. Map scales show us distance. And the last thing that they should have on them is labels. Sometimes it's really tough to figure out where you're at on a map if you don't have labels that are already on the map itself. So pretty much anything that I cannot find in the legend, I should have labeled on the map so that the reader of my map can understand it a little bit better. All right, let's look at a couple of these features. First one I want to focus on is legend. So if you see right here, we see the legend of this map. I know this map is about China and specifically about China's vegetation because that's right in the title here. So by using the legend, obviously I can see the colors here and I can see symbols to figure out different things about China. So now that I have this legend, I can see that the southeast part of China is all covered in forest. And I can see that the national capital of China, using this symbol, is right here, which would be Beijing. So legends help teach us a lot about the map that we wouldn't know before. Compass roses. Compass rose obviously shows us a lot about direction. You should know at this point that there's two types of direction. There's cardinal directions, which are our main four: north, south, west, and east. And then there's our intermediate directions, which are our second level of directions, which is northwest, northeast, southeast, and southwest. So I've had people in the past that get really struggle with knowing which direction is which. And you might have heard of the phrase never eat soggy waffles. And to be honest with you, I don't like that phrase because people still mess it up sometimes. So, what I would like you to remember from here on out is that north and south are always going to be top and bottom, right? If you think of the North Pole, you think of top, South Pole would be the bottom. So, north is up top, south is at the bottom. The one that people mostly mess up on, though, is this west and east. So, if you did it wrong and you switched east and west here, it spells the word ew. So if I'm looking here, that says ew, right? Ew is not good. Ew is not good at all. So if we are correct, then it spells the word we. We are correct, we are happy, and we have them in the right spot. So that's a quick little way to remember which way is west and which way is east is by remembering the we trick and making sure it does not say ew. All right, and the last thing I want to talk about is scale. Scale is typically showing how many miles apart different things are, or how many feet apart different things are, right? So when we take a big place like the world or a big country or a state, we have to scale it down quite a bit in order to fit it on a map. So map makers, cartographers, will take a scale and they'll say, okay, maybe 1 inch equals 10 miles, which means if I kept going, 2 inches would equal 20 miles. Some people draw them like this. This is a very simple one. They just draw a line and they put little dash marks, little hash marks where different mile markers are. So from here to here is 100 miles, from here to here is 200 miles, and so on. All right, and then they could get a little bit more complicated down here. 1 mile is there, 5 miles, 10 miles, and then you could also use other forms of measurements like kilometers down there. Okay, so now I want to talk about what map features should look like on good maps. So this is kind of what a map would look like maybe when you were starting off grade school, kindergarten, first grade, where you can see a lot of things on the map here, but you're still missing some important things. I can see a title. I know this map is about Lakeside Campground, so the title's there. I see a key or a legend, which shows what these different icons mean here. And I kind of see that they started a compass rose, but obviously I don't see that they finished it, right? What I'm missing labels because I don't know what this water is. I don't know where we're at. I am missing also a map scale, so I don't know how far apart any of these things are. So this is kind of like a map that you might have seen in like first or second grade. And then when you got to third and fourth grade, you might have enhanced it and amped it up a little bit more, right? So this is a map called Our Little Town Map. This map has most of the features that we're looking for. It has a title, Our Little Town. It has a compass rose right here, very accurate. It has labels now, so I can see Little Town Neighborhood, Lake Littletown, the library, and it has labels of things that I can't find out in the legend, and it does have the legend located right here. The only thing this one's missing is still the scale, right? So I still don't know how far away different places are from each other. I don't know if the neighborhood is 1 mile from the library or if the neighborhood is 10 miles from the library. So a scale would be really helpful there. And then last but not least, this is kind of what a sixth grade level map is, right? So it looks a little more complicated, a little bit more expert level, but I have all 5 of those features that I need. So first I see the title here. We see Africa right here in the corner. So I know that the map is about Africa. I see down here that we have the legend, all right? The legend is going to tell us a few things about our map here. I see labels all over the map here, all right? So there's labels of different countries, so I can know what all the different countries in Africa are. I see the scale down here kind of tiny towards the bottom. And then last but not least, as you're looking around, you might be thinking, do I have a compass rose? And no, you don't have a full compass rose, but you do have this little N right here in the corner, which shows us that north is that way. And if you know that north is up, then I can figure out all the other directions because I'm in sixth grade and I can figure out all the directions without looking at all of them labeled there. So this is an example of a perfect map of everything there that we need for a map reader to understand. Okay, so now that we've talked about what 5 parts they need on them, let's talk about different types of maps. What other types of maps are there? So maps serve a lot of different purposes, right? First purpose is a political map. So you might have heard of political maps before, but you might not know what they actually are used for. So the biggest thing that political maps are used for are boundary lines or border lines, right? So political maps show borders between places. That's all you need to remember. So this political map of the United States shows all the different states and it shows the borderline around the state. So like here's the borderline of South Dakota, you can see the borderline around Montana here, and they even went through and made them different colors so that it was a little bit easier to understand as well. So it clearly separates all the different states. Here's another political map. I see that Ohio is the focus, but I also still see the borderlines around Ohio for all the different states that border us. I also see the border of Lake Erie. So anything that shows clear border lines is going to be a political map. As I keep going, the next type of map I want to talk about is a physical map. Physical maps, you can see that they actually look like you can physically touch them a lot of times. You can see some texture here. Physical maps are all about elevation. Elevation is how high you are above sea level. So this can include mountains or hills, or if you're below sea level, in the water, right? So physical maps are going to show us all these physical features. So if I'm looking at this map, I can see over here that it looks a little bit bumpier. And that's because if you zoomed in on this legend here, I can see that this is talking about elevation here. So up top is red, which means it's way higher above sea level, 9,000 feet above sea level. And then down here in the green, that's at sea level. And then the blue obviously means you're in the water. So as I'm looking at this map again, now I know that these darker colors mean that it's higher up. And then these lighter green and yellow colors mean it's a little bit closer to the sea level itself. Okay, so that's a physical map. Here's another physical map. This is just Ohio, so now they zoom in on Ohio and they can also make one just for Ohio. So you can do physical maps of any place, whether it's a small place or if it's a bigger country itself. Okay? Then we have population map. Population maps are obviously going to tell us how many people are living in a certain area. What I want you to notice here though is that there's border lines throughout all of the states here. So not only is this a population map, what other map is it that I just taught you about? Well, hopefully you just said that's a political map as well, because I see boundaries around all of these different places. One thing that is missing though is labels. If these states were labeled, that would make it a little bit easier for us to understand. But this map is going to tell us all about the population of the United States. So I can see that the yellow means that there's 15 million people or more. The blue means there's less than 1 million people. And all of the other colors in between show all the different populations of the different states in our country. I could also look at population a different way. Instead of having border lines, sometimes they show population with a little bit of a spread here. So this one's not as organized because there's no border lines. It's not political. So this is a population map of China. And I can see that the left side is yellow and the right side is red. The further red you go, the more populated it is. So I can look at this map and know that over here, there is more population, there are more people living here than up here in the yellow, where there's not many people living there. And if you know anything about China, that's because there's a lot of deserts and mountain land up here. So most people are going to live here where the water is closer and they have a little bit more access to resources. Another map we have as an option is climate map. Climate maps are going to tell us a lot about weather patterns and average weather types. So this climate map, for example, tells us different types of climate that we can find around the world. So just to pull out a couple here, I see tropical wet climate. I see that the tropical wet color was green, and you can see that pretty much all along the equator, which makes sense because that's the warmest place on Earth. And we know that a lot of those places that are on the equator have a tropical climate. I see this orange means arid. Arid's kind of a fancy word for dry and hot. So a lot of desert land that you could see around this area would be an arid climate. And then as you get to some of those cool colors like blues and purples and white, that we know that those are going to be located more towards the poles, the North and South Pole, because the climates of those are a little bit colder, right? So I can show climate like this, or I can show climate like a color bar, kind of like we did with elevation, right? So these blue colors might be lower temperatures. The red color might be a hotter temperature. If you notice here, they're using Celsius, not Fahrenheit, which we're used to. But you can see this color bar here, which will help figure out different climates from around the world as well. So kind of like this one, it's just a different perspective. I see that the red is going to be along the equator because that's the warmest areas. And as we get further from the equator, it's going to turn a little bit more blue and dark blue because that's where the colder areas are. The last type of map I want to tell you about is a resource map or an economic map. These maps tell us all about which natural resources are available in all of the different areas of a certain place, right? So I can look at this map of Africa and I can see that I can find some natural gold here, some coffee, some diamonds, some oil, and I can look in this political boundary lines and figure out which countries are going to give me a certain type of resource. Or over here is another resource map, and you can see they did it a little bit differently, but you can see that they use certain colors to show different resources throughout this country right here, right? So resources map are really good if I want to find out which natural resources are in an area. And the last thing I want to tell you about is that you might be thinking of other maps that don't fit into any of these categories, and you are right. Every other map in the world is pretty much called a thematic map. You see the word theme in here, which basically means it's a map that has a theme. So you can make a map for almost anything in the world these days, right? So I pulled up a couple examples here. I have a map of world religions here. I have a map of Hurricane Irma, which is a hurricane that happened a few years ago here. And then I have a map of the election from 4 years ago here. So these are all different maps, right, that have different purposes. They don't fit into the population category or the climate category or the physical category. They might have some features of those, but these maps were made for a specific purpose, for a specific theme. So we're just going to call all other maps thematic maps. Okay, guys, that's all I want to talk about today. Hopefully you're understanding what good maps have on them, and you also are understanding what different types of maps there are in the world and the purposes for those. If you have any questions, let me know, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Have a great day, everybody.